Hello, and welcome to today's Artist Roundtable conversation. I'm Caitlin Manfrey, Director of Ovations Offstage Community Partnerships, and I would like to first offer up a land acknowledgement. Portland Ovations acknowledges that the places where we gather, dance, and sing is ancestral Wabanaki land. We wish to pay respects to the Abenaki, Maliseet, Micmac, Passamaquoddy, Penobscot, and their elders, past, present, and future. Thank you. And thank you again for joining us today. We are so fortunate to be bringing together this dynamic group, including our visiting artist, Toto Kisaku. Today's event is captioned and sign language interpreted. Many thanks to our American Sign Language interpreters, Amanda Sicard and Allison Jones. As you may have heard, Toto has rescheduled his winter tour of Requiem for an Electric Chair. The performance will now take place on April 27th at the Westbrook Performing Arts Center. If you already have your tickets, there's nothing you need to do. You will be automatically transferred to the new date. More information can be found on our website. We are so glad to be able to keep this performance in our season so we can share this important work with you. That said, Toto is here with us today. An award-winning Congolese playwright, actor, director, and theater producer, Toto Kisaku invites both the audience and actor to travel beyond the walls of the performance space. He studied drama at the National Institute of Arts in Kinshasa and has had a vibrant career full of collaboration with many internationally known artists. Toto arrived in the United States in 2015 to seek political asylum, which he was granted 3 years later. Set in an illegal detention center, Requiem for an Electric Chair is a powerful and unforgettable solo multimedia performance about Toto's escape from persecution because of his artistic expression. Recognized in his native Democratic Republic of Congo for creating theater that shines a bright light on injustices, Toto is a masterful storyteller whose work has been presented at festivals around the world. We are so excited to have Toto with us today, and he is joined in conversation by 3 of our local main artists. Machar is a spoken word poet who has spent a decade working to advocate for disproportionate and minority youth in the mental health field. She has received numerous awards for this work, celebrating her contributions to the South Sudanese diaspora. Today, she works as a multicultural victims advocate for sexual assault response services of Southern Maine. She motivates others to find strength in their voices through creative means. Welcome, Moon. Along with us, also with us today is Kerem Durdag, a playwright, poet, and translator of Urdu and Turkish poetry. He is the founder and managing partner of Indus Fund, which works to support New Mainer business owners. He and his collaborator, Andy Hackle, have been working with Ovations as part of our commissioned Maine Artists program on a musical theater piece entitled Everywhere, Nowhere, which tells the epic story of 2 immigrants who find themselves in the US and over the course of lives lived, make it their home. Welcome back, Kerem. And finally, joining us today as both participant and moderator is Reza Jalali. Reza is the executive director of the Greater Portland Immigrant Welcome Center, as well as a noted writer and educator. His 5-act play, The Poets and the Assassin, which is about women in Iran and Islam, has been staged to rave reviews. His latest book, Dear Maine, The Trials and Triumphs of Maine's 21st Century Immigrants, co-authored with Morgan Riley, was published in the fall of 2021. Reza's storytelling was also featured on National Public Radio's popular program, The Moth Radio Hour. Thank you all so much for joining us. If those of you tuning in have questions for our artists, please make sure to put them in the Q&A box. And now I will turn it over to you, Reza, to kick us off.
Thank you so much. And I want to add my welcome to all of you and those participating and my friends, co-artists, and as part of this panel. I want to start by making some remarks that Robert Frost said that every poem begins with a lump in the throat. Every poem begins with a lump in the throat. So does describing a life spent in exile, voluntarily or not. The survival in the no man's land, being surrounded by unfamiliar people, and the regret one feels when remembering home, and the longing for belonging. And we understand that we live in an age of displacement and exile, displacement between worlds, a past where an artist had an identity, was part of a community, and felt safe, and separated by a fluid present and a future which is not certain. I would argue that that an exiled artist, that the four of us here, we are experiencing what I would call the homeless mind, and a desire, a nostalgia for the past, that we were part of a community, that we spoke and wrote in the languages that were our mother tongues, and living in exile and having to deal with that and writing about home. So with that said, I would like to start with our guest, Toto. I got to tell you how excited I am and how honored I feel to be part of this conversation, just as happy and honored I am that I have Moon here with us, and someone that I admire and love so much. And of course, Kerem, someone who continues to inspire me with his writing, with his speaking. And so it's totally a joy to be with you all. And so I will start with you, Toto. And I was reading about you, and I thought that we need to begin with this question, that, if I may, what is it like to write a personal narrative that, in this case, in your case, will be performed by oneself, by you, as opposed to writing a piece that is then placed in the hands of others to perform?
Thank you so much, Reza. Thank you for the Portland Ovations to having me today. I'm really excited. It's my honor to be here, and I can wait to be there for the Requiem for an Electric Chair. My work is based on the history, on the story. I'm focusing first to my own history, because so many people, most of people just focusing to the family story, to the country story, the continent story, but a lot of people just forgetting about their own story. How our own story can inspire the community. What part of our story can impact the community? That's why just one day I stopped to put on stage other people pieces, because I said to myself, if you put on stage, for example, Shakespeare pieces, this is a really, really beautiful author. People, when they get to the theater, they found out themselves like it's not a real. This is, okay, I'm in the theater because I'm watching Shakespeare. But if you put on stage your story that's connected with the community story, people will be identified themselves to your story. And also you relate the other people's story, the community story. It's about the present. That's the motivation that allows me to write what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, what is a movement around me, what is the old issues that surrounded me, surrounded my community, surrounded the world right now. That's one of the things that's motivating me to write the story of my fellow.
Thank you, Toto. Thank you. I'm going to ask Moon a question. As a spoken word poet, you have helped young people in this community to find their own voices, to tell their stories, and find the strength in doing so. And you came to this country and found yourself resisting and fighting if I may, I would call it a holy war, fighting forces that diminish, at least try to diminish, dismiss, and ignore your history, your culture. And by resisting these forces, you manage to not only found your own voice, but also give strength to others whose voices were stunned by the same forces. So tell me, what is it that you write about?
That is a loaded question. It depends on who. It depends on who's in my spectrum during that phase of my life, or the situations that have really opened my eyes to a piece of the human experience that I wanted to explore. And a lot of that is tapping into the emotions. So when I first arrived, it was this piece of my darker skin, my darker complexion. I was one of the only people of color in my classroom. I also saw that once I entered into my family's home, it turned into a much different place. The culture, the smells, the languages, the proverbs, you know, the jokes and the ways that my parents tried to teach us life lessons was very different than the harsher world outside that continuously tried to stunt my voice or put me in a certain category because of my tone. And then when you see my name spelled out and it wasn't Washington or Robertson, and they could tell that I came from places from away, it drew a certain curiosity. And sometimes in the insecurities of childhood, that curiosity could sometimes manifest itself with anger of not understanding. So I found poetry to be this piece that has helped me to integrate the emotions that I had, because obviously I was young and I was different. So I did have my own insecurities, but I began to get my sense of power from being able to put a cadence to words and emotions that I had. And as an artist, if you cry on stage, it actually complements and amplifies the emotions that you're trying to project to, or the message you're trying to project to whatever audience that you're speaking to. So when I first began, you know, I also went through certain traumas in my childhood that I did not know how to resonate with. And so poetry became this way of giving me this abstract opportunity to use metaphors to, you know, give animal characteristics or give different placements to the things going on, with my brain being a forest. And if I was walking through, anger, you know, could be a bear or a lion. And I was able to face it and actually speak to the fear, because anyone could be able to relate to the fear of a wild animal. And sometimes the emotions that succumb us when we go through the hardships of life, it draws that same fear. So poetry has just become, I call it my other language, because if I can't portray or be able to speak about the darkness that I was going through in plain text, or able to just say out loud, this is the abuses I've endured, this is the hardships I have, I found this new way of being able to scream what was going on inside me. And only some will be able to translate it to mean how it resonates and fall into their own lives. But me, myself, I knew the secret of what it meant for myself. And so that silence culture, or that modesty culture of silencing your struggles, went away. And I was able to empower myself on a theater or through my writing.
Thank you, Mood. Listening to you in so many ways is like listening to your poetry, and I want to thank you. We'll get back to you. Kerem, I was reading somewhere that exile in some ways is like death. One thinks that it can only happen to other people. And here we are, all of us are in exile. And I was interviewing Kerem for a story in the book that has just come out, Dear Maine, which I co-authored with Morgan Riley. And Kerem made this statement, which is so poetic, and it stayed with me. And he said, at one point, he said, I left 2 continents for the sake of love. And in his case, this was the love of his spouse. And that line has stayed with me, that in some ways we leave continents, countries, communities, cultures, And out of fear, out of love, out of adventure, regardless, I want to ask you, Kerem, to tell me in your own poetic way that you're known for. What is home? Where is home in your case? Is it Karachi, Pakistan? Is it a village in Turkey? Is it a Scarborough, Maine? Where is home?
You know, I hate it when you ask such hard questions. I do. It's so hard. Made even harder by the fact that I find it hard to talk about it. So, not because I can't, but because it's a big subject. And like Moon, you know, you just had this habit of dropping these questions. Like, you know, I defer to Toto because, you know, he's sort of the master artist over here. I'm just a fellow traveler on the road of self-expression. But look,
you're known to be modest,
you know,
Kerem. You're
no,
known to be very modest.
Look, you know, I you know, home for me is love. And you know, for me, it's this very, very tortuously complicated and beautiful presence in a multiplicity of physical locations and in a multiplicity of physical presences with friends, with family, with loved ones that are here with us, who are not here with us, who will be with us, right? So to some extent, you know what, when I was listening to Moon, what I was trying to figure out what's the best way to articulate these things. But, you know, in some way, my life has gone from being to give some things voice, to being a witness, to now being some sort of a dervish seeker, right? And you go through these sort of these currents of life. And I think that the searching for the home is part and parcel of that. There are days when I feel very, very rooted to Maine, and there are some days when I feel extremely adrift. But in that adriftness, I find refuge in the friends I grew up with and the city that I grew up with, which is Karachi, which then sometimes translates to me losing myself in speech and poetry and music of Turkey, or my birth culture and my family members. It is a very, very shifting dynamic. It's a very shifting sands. And I think part and parcel of the challenge for our times is I tend to be very comfortable in gray areas and nuance. And sometimes society likes to sort of label and likes to be able to pinpoint and define. And my life has actually been defined by undefining that. And predominantly because of the luck of life and where I ended up being born, to the parents I was born to, and the environment I grew up with. I think to some extent, my view on things is also defined by the fact that I grew up under a dictatorship. So I tend to be very, very sensitized to things that try to engage things, you know. And I'm not trying to deflect the question, but I'm just saying that to some extent, we are all trying to seek meaning in the things that are ready at hand to us. And for me, that in that seeking perhaps is the definition of home, actually. Right? So I can find myself at home on the top of a mountain, which I have, and I love those moments, and I don't want to leave them, but one has to. And I think those are the choices that you make very intentionally and consciously and say, okay, where do I capture that again somewhere else? And so I think it's a journey. I don't think it ever ends. I think it's a tragedy of our lives, but I think it's a very, very beautiful tragedy. And I think if we're sensible about it, then we say, you know what? At the end of the day, it's all about love and all about having grace. I hope. But in that, you scream a lot too, by the way. I mean, that's what dervishes do. We tend to, you know, I'm not saying I am one. I want to probably belong to a subset of a small set of them, but you tend to scream a lot on trying to find that voice. Where's that voice go? And who do you want to love? And how do you want to love? To me, to me, that's the existential question. Other than democracy and climate change and and all sorts of other really, 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 really important things. But to me, as somebody that's trying to put stuff on paper or sing it or write it or act it, Toto, I would love to freaking act on a stage with you one day. But, it's that seeking. It's that really seeking, right? What is that little grain of sand that we want to feel? What is that music that just freaking blows our minds off and plasters it on the wall behind us and go, wow, I just saw the light. And oh, by the way, I just lost the light. I saw it, I lost it. Ah, crap. Okay, now how do you do that again? So yeah. Yes. To me, home is, it's ephemerally crazy, beautiful, non-existent here, there, everywhere. You see, complicated question, very, very, very diffusely complicated answer.
Thank you, Kerem. I thought you nailed it in so many ways for those of us who are missing home, and somehow we deal with our own trauma through creating art. In fact, sometimes artists can be selfish, that in the process of pretending to be writing for others, they're actually starting the process or taking steps in terms of healing their own trauma. And I'm going to ask Toto a question. Kerem talked about screaming, quote unquote. And that reminded me of what in an essay I wrote years ago, that how a poet, and in this case, a storyteller, a performing artist, so let's say an artist, role in the society is not only to be an honest historian of their time, but also to wake up the world and to continue to do that, to ensure that the world doesn't feel asleep, doesn't start to ignore the screams of those, the innocence abroad, the suffering of others. So my question for you is, as a performing artist, what do you see as the role of the audience that you're writing and performing for? I heard from a very reliable source that you had said, and I quote, "I don't write for a community. I write because of them." Can you elaborate more? Can you tell us more, please?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Sometimes I'm stopping to the light traffic and the crosswalk. I'm asked to myself, why did they decide to put the crosswalk? And what about the light traffic? I said, it's because a lot of people dying by crossing, without looking left and right. Because there is so many accidents. That's why they decide to do those crosswalks, so people can be aware about it. It was to fix something. The audience is, for me, is the important part of performance, because we're starting by the community that is represented by the audience inside of the theater. We're writing, we're performing because of them, because of the issues in our community. That's why we're inspired to try to fix, to try to change. But if you're doing something for the audience, for me, it's going more about the entertainment. I don't really I try to pronounce entertainment, to make them happy, to make them to be present, to make them to try to live. But I think the only way we can do, the audience could do, is just to let them to be, because they are already living. They are living already. So what we have to to tell the audience, to tell the communities about the being, our existence, because there is so many issues in the world. The artist has that role to design new crosswalk, but in their life. So we can really try to tell them what's going on in front of us, what's going on forehead. For me, the important time in the timeline is the present. Because yesterday we lived our present, tomorrow we're gonna live our present. But a lot of people focusing to tomorrow, other people focusing, about my story, about this. A lot of people, I found that so many people just living with like anger about their past. They say, you know what, look what they did to my ancestor. I have to avenge it. So the story or the history just bringing people back. The history bringing them back, or just let them stay at the same place, but doesn't help him to go forward, to move on. That's why I always think I'm writing because of the issues that human beings just messing up. I'm writing because of that. I'm writing for them because in subconscious of human being think like he's already found out or what he needs, what he can do. But if you do something because of the issues that the human being creating, that's how we can help. We're gonna be the same way that's people who putting them together and decided we should fix this because there's so many people die, because there is so many death in the world. I think art, it's at the same level than hospital, the same level than the security of territory. We are the same level and homeland security. Art is all of that because it's fixing that can come in the future and fix it in the present. That's why I said I'm writing, I'm acting, I'm directing, I'm producing because of the issues of human being in our communities, in our neighborhood that represent the world.
Thank you. What a profound metaphor you used, the crosswalks that really, in a way, also, I look at crosswalks as connecting one side to the other. It connects us the same way a bridge does. And Moon, speaking of crosswalks, and also hearing you talking about how growing up, you heard your parents share stories, myths, and folklore, tales of the past. I was reminded of what Elias Corey said, that in the streets, how did he say it? I'm trying to say it correctly, and I quote, that there are stories tossed in the streets of our memory as exiled people. The stories tossed carelessly. I'm adding the carelessly. He didn't say that. In the streets of our memory, end of quote. So I want to ask you, tell us about some of the stories. Tell us that if that motivates you to write, if you're sharing the same stories, you're connecting us while you create your poetry and the stories to that world that does not exist anymore, that faceless humanity, the faceless communities that they left behind as a child. And some of them might have gone away.
Yeah, that was a beautiful question. And Toto, you sparked some ideas inside my head with the metaphor about crosswalks, because I think that as artists, one of the most important things that we do is we do create present crosswalks to have somebody be able to validate what you have gone through, but also give you a bridge to come over on the other side. And for me, it reminds me so much of the stories that my father would tell me about the wars that were going on in his land. I was blessed and fortunate enough that both my parents brought me away from the conflict at 5 years old, but the conflict didn't leave us. And so because both my parents had family back home, we would hear about the deaths. The emotions did not get buffered out because of the distance, or it did not dilute it because of the distance. And I think about my relationship with my siblings. And when something happens to them, regardless of where they are in the world, that's going to affect my heart in the same way. And I had to use that as a comparison to my parents who left behind their siblings in crisis and conflict areas, and how real those emotions were once the news reached our home. And in one of the lines of my poem, I say, I made the child soldier laugh. And I'm talking about my father. And in that piece, that became that crosswalk for him to be able to understand that I understood the hardships of why he could not laugh or why he could not smile. But then I added this jovial because I am his daughter, and there's a relationship between a father and a daughter that softens the heart. And so I gave him a crosswalk to come out on the other side, to acknowledge that he has gone through hardships in his life, but now it is okay to smile, and there's reason to be happy and tap into the joys of it. The stories that my mother tells me and the ways that she is able to direct my life through dreams. It's a very serious thing in my home. If my mother had a dream that you shouldn't go to this place on Saturday, you will not go to that place on Saturday. And that's a realness, and it resonates with the culture of the ways that I move. And so all of these have created this incredible way for me to be able to develop a story and speak about characters and draw off different characters that my parents gave me. You know, when I would, in my childhood, my father would tell me stories about creatures and spiritual creatures that came out of the water and why I shouldn't go, you know, it to other people when I write about it in my poetry, they think I'm telling fairy tales, but they don't understand that to me, culturally, it resonates as a very real warning and true life lessons. And it's funny that it did not hear when I come into this country and I watch Disney movies and I see little pieces of my cultural piece that have now been made into this fictional tale of a life lesson. And I know that my parents were the Disney movies for me growing up. They were the ones who gave me ideas of how to really stretch my imagination and my understanding to know that there's so much more beyond the physical world. And I think that's what art does for so many people. It takes you beyond your physical circumstance. It takes you beyond the components of your memory that are tangibly tied to one situation, whether it be war, whether it be hurt, whether it be happy, whether it be love, and it grows it to be more of this whimsical piece that allows you to ride a wave of an emotion, to really appreciate all the love that you have in your life, to acknowledge that there are hurts that go on in our life, that it's okay to lean into the emotion of it. It's okay to cry for the things that we've lost. It's okay to live in the present and be devastated by certain pieces, but it also gives you a crosswalk that another artist just validated your feeling to be able to cross over to the other side and use it. And as you say, memories are carelessly sometimes left, and we don't know how to be able to compartmentalize them so that they're not just open wound or scar, but a reference piece that we could safely reach on and touch on, but be able to, again, go through the crosswalk because we know where a certain piece of poetry or art has led us to come across on the other side. So I think with me, storytelling and coming from two giants from two ancient worlds it was no accident. I think that there was a lot of divine appointment. They might have thought that they just fell in love, but I think that there was much more to it that led to who I am today and led to me being able to even sit here and be able to speak about my artistry.
Thank you, Moon. Thank you. It is very profound and gorgeous. Kerem, I'm going to behave and ask you less complicated questions, but no promises. You inspire me in so many ways. One of them being that you have this ease to move from one genre to another. And behind your back, I've called you a Renaissance man because I've heard you sing. I have seen you dance. I have had the honor of reading your poetry, listening to you speaking, and also reading your playwrights. And then you're making movies and your essays. I can't tell you, when I read your essays, and sometimes when I actually read your poetry, I weep. And that's part of being actually a dervish. I wanted to share that with you in case you're still trying to become a dervish. To me, you're already one. You're a Sufi master, and I'm one of your followers. So that the road, how your poetry makes me weep. And I want you to tell us, first of all, how would you find that ease to move from one genre to another without any really difficulty? It is this beautiful current, almost unseen current. And also the second part, see, I broke my promise. I was going to ask you an uncomplicated question. Second part is, why are you writing?
I'll answer the first one, the second one first, because that might set the stage for the second one. I write because it's I write because it's me, because I don't have a choice. Part of it's probably therapy in terms of dealing with life. Mm-hmm. Part of it is as intentionality to try to be, right? So very sort of Heideggerian, Nietzschean in that regard. I just try to be. And part of it is also I am constantly thinking of what can I do, something is infinitesimally and marginally beautiful that eons from now somebody can pick it up and say, crap, that is pretty cool. So it's selfish in that regard, but also selfless. And don't ask me to make definitions or distinctions behind those, because I can't. So that, I think that's why I write. In terms of moving between genres, I think part of it is just my DNA, right? So, I'm Turkish and Pakistani. I grew up and then I fostered that over so many years of, we are an oral tradition. So, we sing, we write poems that become songs, right? So in the Western canon, songs and poems tend to have a fairly defined membrane. Pakistan and Turkey, they don't, which I absolutely adore, right? And then, this whole idea of movies, I've been watching movies since I was 3 years old, and I've watched them in the craziest and craziest of places, and it all boils down to the way our retinas absorb the story and can completely dive into it and then come out of it feeling alive and reborn. And movies to me have this massively elemental importance in the art canon of being a populist format, and yet it be so delicate. I mean, just that to me is, and just think of the gathering it is, right? I mean, so one of the, I can go on about movies, but one of the most beautiful movies ever made in the 20th century in the West is The English Patient, which is based on Michael Ondaatje's book, which won the Booker Prize, and then became this gorgeous movie. And it's all about actually immigrants and people in exile and love and war and this seeking, right? The reason why that percolates in my soul is because it has a permanence that is always present, not because of the story, but because of the way it melds all artistic forms. You have the music, you have the storytelling, you have these visual elements, you have the dances that are, it's part and parcel of those cultures. Part of it is because as human beings, we're in this constant soup of expression. So to me, moving from one to another within that soup at least justifies my level of seeking and insanity. I can't seem to choose. Now that's my failing. I'm not saying that's my failing, that I don't want to choose. I don't want to pick one over the other because I think they're all beautiful and they all are intimately tied to my desire to create something beautiful. So part of it is if I fail in one, hopefully the other one sticks. If that doesn't work, I can go back. And one of my very, very close friends from way, way, way back, we've known each other since we were 4 years old, said, "You are just nuts. You have no fear." And he's right. I'm not saying that's a positive because you can run into walls and not realize it. But to some extent, I made that decision of not to have fear. And sure, I can dive into the world of failure and come right out, because to me, I rather try that and not have any regrets. And I've been blessed in that regard, that I seem to navigate that failure route really, really, really well. And that's okay. And that's okay, because I really, really, really want to create something that sticks for eternity. So I'm willing to go through the 85 levels of Hades just to be able to get there. And it's very selfish, actually, to think that I'm capable of something like that, because I may not be. But boy, at least it keeps my soul alive. So that's why I like to sing, and that's why I like to write songs and write plays and little screenplays and all that stuff, because I am in search of that little sunbeam, just a little one, just and after that things tend to sort of come, or not, but that's what I am in search of. And I can't, when I'm listening to Toto and Moon, I can only imagine it'd be so cool to just sit around and chat, because the cool thing about doing all of this, really, at the end of the day, is to do it with people you love. Seriously. That's where the magic freaking sometimes happens. And to me, that's just the coolest thing. We artists in the Western canon was different than I suspect in Africa, and certainly in the Middle East. There's this thing about the tortured artist being sort of one, the individual, sort of trying to make it happen. My soul is different. I want to do it as part and parcel of this bubbling, because I think then it sticks. It's not some vacuum effort. Can't be. Otherwise, it's meaningless. Most bad art is because of that. Right? So if you can do it with some really, 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 really cool people, man, even if you fail, it's fun.
I think what I'm hearing, Kerem, that art can also help us create communities. And that's really important to those of us without communities, that in so many ways, art brings us together and creates community connections, which is really what Portland Ovations has been doing. And that's why we all are part of this today's program, that we're creating this kind of to borrow Kerem's word, really this gorgeous community together. But I think the time has come for me to see if you have questions for one another, if we could spend some brief questioning of each other in regard to arts, what moves you, the role of activism in art, and if something is moving you, a book, a movie you've seen. So please feel free to go ahead and ask questions, if any.
I would love to ask a question. I think we all come from such rich cultures, and there's all the pieces of our culture and then the migration to the US and the merging of it. This is a perfect example. This is my mother's bunna set. And my little self herself went and got myself a little New York that she doesn't know, but actually holds double the coffee than her little cups do. And so I have it on her table just, and so all my other siblings get the little one, but I found a life hack to it. So what are the pieces within your art or within your narration where you've seen the merging of a cultural piece or something that you did back home that was so potent to your culture, and how you merged it with the cultures here in the US?
Oh, wow.
That's a good one, Moon.
That's a good one.
Mhm, mhm.
I comes with it. I comes with it.
Oh, is the question destined to Karen or Toto?
Either of
You
you
first,
can
Toto.
respond.
You're first.
You're first. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think when I was in Congo before I came here, as the script, the presentation says, since 2003, I was spending like 3 months in Congo and the rest of the time out of Congo for 15 years. That means I didn't have the land. I didn't have the space. I didn't have the ground. But what I found is everywhere I used to be, it was considered like my home, my space, my countries, because the time that you are your feet in the ground, you have to consider that place is your home. That means in Congo, there are so many issues. I'm not a doctor, I'm not the lawyer, but I think the real problem is that what we are not seeing is what we are thinking about and what we are feeling. So what I found the same than where I'm from is about the feelings, about the pressure, is about the depression. And also what I found the difference in between the Congo. In Congo, there is so many issues, but people are really smiling all the day. People are struggling, but they are just covering by smiling. The only place you can see people, you can see the struggle to people, it's in the bus station, where people staying there, but they don't know when the bus gonna come, when they're gonna get home. There is nothing. So it's that lack of hope that you can find. But if they leave the bus station, they got in the taxi or the bus, everything changed. And it's that way people can change the way that they are living. But what I found here that's inspired me a lot, it's you can see people living with struggle all their life, even though they are like the good mode around them. They are not really going to open, to for me, this is for me is good, because the more their issues, the more their trouble, the more their problem, I can have a job, So for that, if I have to bring the Requiem for an Electric Chair to that question, it's how I get here. When I get here, I was sick, I was skinny, I was, because I'm writing, the first thing just happened to me, I started writing, but I didn't start writing a piece of theater. I started just writing, or I met my 7 days in that illegal cell. But the difference was I'm not in Congo. How people can just get that quickly, because people are not dying every day in this country like in Congo with war, with rebellions, with people are not dying here like that. Here, people has another conception of death. But in Congo, people not anymore crying or celebrating death at the same way here. Mm-hmm. People are not, the death became normal. You know, death became a normal. But the problem was, how can I just put that story, people can understand what I made on my journey. So that was the difficult, because I'm not just an author. I'm a playwright. And what I decided, I say, okay, I made a piece of theater that helped people, because that piece was about children who are accused of sorcery. That piece saved lives. And the guy who saved my life said, I cannot kill you because I know you, is someone who showed the play. Mm-hmm. And that means the theater saved my life as well. Mm-hmm. The only recognition the gratefulness I could do to the theater, it was to turn that story to the theater. That for me, it was like to be grateful to the theater for that work I love, that work I love because of what it's doing in the world. That's why I say, okay, I'm gonna be on stage. But after the stage, I just said, after the premiere, I just said, this story is not my story anymore. It's the story of people who knowing those kind of things exist, but they don't doing anything, or they don't doing nothing. It's also the story of people who ignoring those kind of things exist. And the last, what I say is the story of people who still living in those kind of place. What I want is the story of people who are gonna be there tonight or tomorrow. That's why I say, so the big issues was for me how to put the piece on the table in the United States, and how people could just understand, can have the same understanding. For me, it's just the traveling from the Congo to here, the issues was about that, all these questions. Because when I went, I will not say the name of the theater, but when I went in New Haven to present my project, my work, that theater tells me, we need a script. I told them, I'm not writing piece of theater, I'm writing performances. I'm not writing piece, I cannot bring the piece because my pieces end after the premiere, that I say, okay, now I have a piece of theater, but I'm writing performances. No, we need a script. So I didn't get that. That means it was tough, really difficult for me to get through, to bring the story on the table, and the story can be consumed by the consumer. that was the issue. So it's all of that I can try to answer or to make some comment to your question or my answer. That's
Toto,
what
I think your example of I cannot kill you because I know you really reinforces the universal understanding that art saves lives, storytelling saves lives, poetry saves lives. In a very little time, we have Kerem. If you want to respond to Moon's question, please go ahead.
No, I'm good. I have a question for Toto and Moon because I know we got to go going. What is your favorite color? And when you look at that favorite color, what do you see?
I could go. So my favorite color, it's on my nails, is this forest green, this dark green. And every single time that I see that color, it gives me earth. It takes me out of the concrete jungle, the right degree angles around me, in the building structures, and everything made from humanity. And it reminds me of something that was made by the divine and the earth.
Oh, that's nice. My favorite one is the blue.
Okay.
You can see the blue and the little bit dark blue because I think blue represents for me the hope, and the dark represent the earth. You can see if you're not looking up, you will look on the ground. So you cannot move forward if you have not that interaction. That's why I'm focusing to the blue, dark, and the clear one.
Well, I wish we had more time. At least we could go on for hours talking to each other and also really.
Karen, I'm so sorry, Karen. What about yours? What is your favorite color and why?
Red, because it tells me about the sun.
Oh.
You touch on all the natural, like water, earth, blood right here, fire. I like it.
Thank you all. I think we've come to the end of the conversation, which to me, it was very fulfilling. I feel rewarded, and I hope that our audience members also got to like it. And I wish we could have got to more questions that the audience members had, but so is life. Thank you so much again, every panelist, every friend. And now I'm going to hand it over to our host. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. That was wonderful. Thank you, Toto, Moon, Kerem, Reza, for being here for such a rich and fascinating conversation. It's been a joy to host you all and so wonderful to hear all of your thoughts. I'm so excited for your show. Toto, I'm very, very excited. And thank you so much to Amanda and Allison for providing today's live interpretation as well. So thank you. Again, Toto has rescheduled his winter tour of Requiem for an Electric Chair, and this performance will now take place on April 27th at the Westbrook Performing Arts Center. If you already have your tickets, they will be transferred to the new date, and if you would like to purchase tickets or find out more information, you can do so at portlandovations.org. So on behalf of today's artists and the whole Ovations team, I would like to thank you at home for tuning in for today's talk. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. See you in April, Toto. See you later, Moon.
See you.
Good, I'll see you in April.
Toto.
Bye, Kareem. Reza.
See you, Moon.